What is up, you guys? We are back with another episode of Investigating Innovation with the I2C. I'm your host, Madison Travis, and on today's Spark Spotlight, we are bringing in one of our mentors, Hassan, and asking him about what he's learned through his past experiences, his professional career, and kind of how that applies to entrepreneurs today. Let's roll.
All right. Hey, Hassan, how are you?
I'm doing well, trying to keep warm up here in the frigid north. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. It was super warm down here yesterday, which was weird. It was like in the 70s almost. So, weird winter weather.
That sounds amazing. Actually, incidentally, I lived in Tennessee for 5 years, and one of the reasons that I got recruited to Tennessee was the person who was recruiting me at the time showed me pictures of an early spring in February in Nashville, Tennessee. And this was when I was in Cleveland, Ohio, where there was 6+ inches of snow on the ground. So you can imagine it was a pretty easy sell.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm sure that immediately got your attention and you're like, "Yep, I'll take that."
Yep. Yeah. Had a
Um,
wonderful time in
oh yeah.
Tennessee, and we'd come down and visit Alabama quite a bit, especially Huntsville. Lovely little town.
Yes, yes. Tennessee is great. I have family that lives in Tennessee, and so I'm there a lot as well. The weather in the South can be really great, and then sometimes it's really terrible. So you never know what you're going to get. But we're super excited to have you on the podcast today. Just excited to kind of see what you have to say about entrepreneurship, your professional experience, and all of that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself.
So I'm an immunologist by background, and towards the end of my tenure in grad school, when I was getting ready to graduate, I wanted to explore entrepreneurship and startups. It was an exciting time about 10 years ago, with the kind of next generation sequencing, genomics coming to the fore. As luck would have it, I ended up in a biofuels company, which is a very interesting experience. The bridge to that was because I did imaging in graduate school, and the folks who were doing algae biofuels also needed some help with imaging, looking at algae cells down a microscope. And so that was my kind of gateway in. And I knew nothing about startup companies or how they were set up. I remember being asked to come up with a business plan, or at least part of a business plan, and I looked up what a business plan would be on Wikipedia, and then kind of went forward from there, and to the best of my kind of abilities, wrote up part of the business plan. Same thing. The next ask was for a provisional patent application, and I had no idea what a patent application was, so I went back to Wikipedia to look at what those things were and just wrote up kind of an essay. But it was a wonderful experience within that little startup. It taught me a lot, and kind of put me on the way towards supporting entrepreneurship, primarily from an academic perspective. So I started off in the Cleveland Clinic, where I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and commercialization around medical devices, mostly in the cardiac space, and moved from there, as I mentioned before, to Tennessee, to Vanderbilt University, which was really my first foray into digital health and digital medicine. And I've stayed with that ever since in my career. So now in my current position in pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
I'm focused on digital health as well. And that's what I would say that my specialty would be,
Right.
is to evaluate companies in the digital health space, ideas in the digital health space, and kind of help them with their business plans, with kind of setting out a customer portrait for them to go after.
Yeah, it's funny how, you went from looking it up on Wikipedia to actually helping other people with it. And I think a lot of people really do have those defining moments where, they kind of just, those interests come out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that you kind of see coming or anything that you really thought you would ever get involved in. But then, things just kind of line up sometimes, and next thing you know it, you're involved in different areas of knowledge and expertise that you didn't really think you would ever have. So that's really awesome that Wikipedia turned into this, I guess. But would you say that there were like some defining moments that you had kind of along the way, kind of like, looking a business plan up online, that led you to becoming a mentor? Or was it kind of just a process? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Madison. So I think for the most part, it's a process, it's a journey. So a lot of the knowledge in the entrepreneurship arena is really kind of learned experiences is what
Yeah.
it is, right? I'm sure there are textbooks written about this and training as well, but I came at it from a different direction. So I depend on kind of my own experiences. But there were some kind of defining moments to help crystallize the thesis that I move forward with now. And one such defining moment actually was with my very good friend Rigvid. Rigvid and I used to work together at Vanderbilt University, and we were looking at a particular piece of software and thought that it had a lot of potential. And when we kind of took a business plan up to have it evaluated, the kind of first pushback that we got was, no, this is mostly for nonprofits. In the for-profit world, it might not sit that well, might not work as well.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't let it go at that stage. So Rigved, myself, together with other kind of experts in the field, we reached out to them, we talked to them, validated the ideas that we had, and we decided to push through anyway. Like it would have been easy to just shelve it and move on to the next thing, and nobody would have been the wiser, I guess.
Right.
But we pushed forward with it, and it's one of those stories that has a happy ending, which is that we turned it into a startup, and it was a startup that was well funded, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. It's in its fifth year of existence, and they have already surpassed all of their expectations on both from a customer projection perspective as well as from an income perspective. So far so good, and that was a great kind of learning experience in not only in trusting your own instincts, but also pulling on a thread to its logical conclusion. Like if you believe that something's going to move forward and there is expert opinion around you, people that you trust who are saying that this is that you're doing something, keep on doing it, then follow it through,
right,
rather than give it up. A lot of times giving up on something is kind of the easy way, and of course we live in a fail fast world, which nothing wrong with fail fast, right? We want to test it out, but the point that I'm trying to underline is test it out and make sure that it fails fast, rather than just taking other people's opinions for it.
Yeah, for sure. And it happens, far too often, to be honest, that a lot of people do look at these entrepreneurs and people who do have such a passion for this idea, whatever that may be, and it's immediately kind of just one, overlooked sometimes, or two, they may think you're crazy for wanting to pursue this. Especially, I think it oftentimes a lot like happens with people who maybe have like a full-time job and like things are fine. So why would they forfeit that to pursue something that seems a little scary and a little risky. So that is a really awesome moment, and really awesome that it did end happily, because like you said, sometimes they don't, but that's really awesome, and definitely a learning experience just all around. I mean, from start to finish, and even now seeing it grow, it's just a continuous learning experience for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised something kind of very important there about somebody quitting their job. Why would they? And that's I think a very important point is, the common saying is necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Somebody that I work for put it more succinctly, which is dissatisfaction is the mother of innovation in that case. And it's the same thing. I mean, first, and I'm like, this is conventional wisdom, and I agree with this, that entrepreneurship is not for everybody, but it is for those people who do experience that frustration, that dissatisfaction with where they are, and are willing to take that risk and jump in, knowing full well that any venture that they undertake, there is a certain significant probability of failure in that. But so long as they're okay with it going in. So it's I don't want to, I highlight a happy ending story in this particular case, that it was something that was successful to prove a point, which was to push forward. But that doesn't mean that I haven't faced rejection where the person doing the rejecting was right about it. So that's there's a number of failures, there's a number of setbacks. Certainly with this startup company that I was highlighting, there was always the question of one step forward and five steps back sometimes, or sometimes four steps back. But there was progress. There was some definitive marker of a next best action to take, and that's what we took. So it's not a story of, hey, we hoped against hope and overcame, which there are stories like that as well. But I mean, I just want to be careful in kind of grounding the listeners that
right.
At least from my perspective, there should be light at the end of the tunnel that we can perceive from a logical kind of perspective.
Well, and even if it does, have that risk that ends, in a small failure, there is still light in that, where at least you realize that this didn't work, and there's always other things to work on, and there's something else out there, and really that dissatisfaction that entrepreneurs are, really wrestling with in their day-to-day lives a lot of times. They are dealing with that dissatisfaction also as a consumer, which is also why they decide to pursue that business. So dissatisfaction from both sides, from the entrepreneur, viewpoint, but also the customers that they will be serving eventually, in whatever form or shape that may be. There's a lot of dissatisfaction there and things to work on. So like you said, you have to push through, because there's obviously something that's making you have that feeling of wanting to work on something more and something better.
Right. No, absolutely. And failures are good things. They're not bad things.
Right.
They kind of set you on the right path and help you course correct. And that is definitely that's definitely a good thing.
For sure. Well, kind of, along that same route, what's some advice, other than kind of what we've said, what is some explicit advice that you would give to these entrepreneurs who are, wrestling with all of this and trying to start their own company, or maybe they already have started? Like, what's that advice that you would give?
So I think first and foremost, and this is conventional wisdom. I mean, nothing, out of the ordinary about this is of course do outreach, network like crazy, but network and do outreach with the perspective of being helpful. So not with kind of an ask. That's kind of the main thing. And you'll see this everywhere. So Richard Branson has a quote about, and actually there's a famous episode of somebody getting up in a crowd in a talk somewhere, I forget where, and asking Richard Branson, I'm sorry, for help with a startup company. Mm-hmm. And Richard Branson said, well, I don't know you from Adam. You haven't helped me out in any which way, and you're going to kind of spread your hand out and look for advice just like that. That's not going to work. And that, of course, it highlights a point, which is for any entrepreneur, there is support that's needed. There's support networks, there's support in terms of technology, in terms of business operations, in terms of providing customers, and of course, capital as well. But the conversation can't start with an ask. It has to and should start with an offer of help. And that can also be something that can fashion into testing out your product or your idea, right? So starting up a conversation, I hear that handoff from physician to physician in the ER is a huge problem. Well, I've got something over here that can help kind of bridge that. Is that something that would help you, Dr. So-and-so, right? Like, would you be interested? How would you go about this? I mean, I'm just, like that kind of thing. So I think it's that the outreach and the proactive piece that is important, but more important is the attitudinal foundation of that, which is you're going out there for the betterment of the community and the help of the community. Proclaim that, even though you're kind of starting out, but proclaim that from that perspective. And that helps communicate, I think, a very positive message and puts people in the right frame of mind.
It does. And it definitely just already starts you off on the right foot. Immediately people are, just as humans, just our nature, we are more prone to have those good relations with people who we think can benefit us in some way. And so I think it's really important, like you said, just to go at it with that attitude, because it can, most of the times only be good and beneficial for both parties, because you're getting a lot of feedback in that time too. If you are asking those questions, you're getting a lot of whether it be, constructive criticism or, a pat on the back, like you're getting a lot of these things, and it's really useful, especially if you're going to really knowledgeable professionals, or those that are in your perceived target market. You're looking at all these people and getting so much good knowledge, and that just leads you down a good path of relationships better on, and you can only just go up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it doesn't take away from the fact that you'll have to knock on a lot of doors. That's
Right.
just the way the business is. I mean, it's whether that's psychology, certain people are just naturally kind of outgoing and engaging, and they want to help. Some other folks might not be in that frame of mind at that particular time
Yeah.
of day, and so it just takes a lot of knocks on a lot of different doors. But the way that you approach it is going to affect the likelihood of success versus and engagement as well. So there certainly is that aspect too. If you come to somebody and say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain about ABC, and can you help me out? And that puts that person in a specific mindset, which is, okay, maybe I can give this 10 minutes or so, right? And in 10 minutes, I'm just going to give this highfalutin, like high level advice, and then we're going to move on with our days.
Right.
But if you're coming to somebody with, look, this is a solution to a problem, I think that it could help solve or bridge this particular gap. What do you think? You might find a lot more alignment, a lot more engagement from that, and that puts you several steps ahead down the path of that conversation and developing that relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of looking further down the road in those, business relationships, obviously as an entrepreneur, funding is a huge part of your journey and your process. And even though, some of those networking opportunities and relationships that you build, they may not be able to offer you, funds or, things like that, but they would be able to offer that advice. And so I think it's just really important to build that network with anybody and everybody, regardless of what you think they may be able to do. They may be able to offer more, or, you just never know what that relationship can lead to. So it's just really important. Like you said, the engagement part is super, super important. Instead of just always asking and taking, and just really trying to focus on that, just give and take relationship.
Absolutely. You said it best. It's a give and take relationship. So there is that exchange of value. It can be seen in that encounter, and that's something that leads to more encounters and more conversations.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Well, you've obviously, had your fair share of different professional experiences and, a little bit of everything. I'm sure you've had a few mentors and people like that along the way. What's some of the best advice that you've ever received? Like, was there one of those moments where you're like, wow, like that really clicked? Or
yeah, that's a very interesting question. So in terms of, I mean, it took a while to click per se, but it's really amazing for me to see how true it is, and the advice that I got was speed is everything. So the meaning for that is you have to focus on execution.
Right.
So it is nice to talk about what you're going to do, but that's only going to work once or twice. There has to be execution. There has to be doing behind it, and that kind of involves a lot of different things. Don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about getting every last detail right. There are going to be gaps that will uncover themselves. There will be shortcomings that will uncover themselves as you move forward. But having the benefit of execution on that version 1, on that version alpha, doing beta testing for the first release, that is the most valuable experience out there. And the more you can talk to it, the more seriously people will take you, that you're for real. Now, and that also solves another problem, which is, how do I get started, right? The blank page, okay, I have this idea. Well, it's much like somebody described to me, actually my wife described it to me in the perfect way, which is you take a lump of mud and you start working on it, and ultimately it's going to turn into a vessel, a piece of art or something, right? But you have to keep working on it. If the lump of mud stays there, it's just going to stay as a lump of mud. And you can talk about putting tools to it or using this technique or reading Picasso, that's not going to change that lump of mud, right?
Right.
You have to keep working away at it, and then you can, once you start giving it shape and keep working on it, it becomes that much closer to
Yeah.
becoming something beautiful and or useful.
Well, and kind of tying, our past two conversations together, this one and the last, if you go to someone with this thing and you're talking and talking, but you don't have anything like concrete for them to offer you feedback on or anything like that, it's going to be really hard for them to kind of have a beneficial discussion with you, because like you said, talk only works once or twice, and then you're just kind of all talk after that, and people aren't going to be willing to have those engaging conversations with you anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to use the example of Elon Musk and SpaceX. And yes, absolutely. Elon Musk doesn't have half the problems that
Right.
every other entrepreneur has. He had a ton of money to get started with. But here's the point, right? With SpaceX, with the aspiration was a rocket that could take off and then land back at the pad, right? And so you can talk about it, and you can talk about the theory behind it, and here's where the thrusters are going to be, and here's where the first stage is going to be, yada yada yada, and here's how many simulations we're going to run. But it came down to physically testing and losing a number of rockets over the period of what, 10 years, I believe,
Wow. Yeah.
before they actually landed back upright,
Hmm.
with the stability systems and all of that. And that is what it is, right? I can go out and say, you're in Huntsville, Alabama, right? NASA is right next door to you. So let's just take that example. I'm going to design a rocket that goes to Mars and comes back. And here's how I'm going to do it. And here's all the physics books that I've read. And here's the people from NASA, et cetera, et cetera. And people are going to be like, yeah, that's great. That's fascinating. And that's the end of the conversation. Now,
Right.
imagine if I add on to that, well, I made some mock-ups, right? And now I'm looking for a fabricator to come up with a miniature working model. I'm just making this up. I know nothing about rocketry or how development works, but just kind of giving you that, right?
Yeah.
Stage by stage by stage. I've made my mock-up. Okay, now I'm going to launch it with rockets. Well, it crashed, but we learned a lot from it. Now I'm going to version 2, version 3, version
Right.
4. So every time you're giving your audience something new to look forward to. And
Oh,
so it
yeah.
might be failure. That's why they call it rocket science, right? Because
Right.
it's not easy to do. But and it might be failure, but it gives you kind of that thing to engage with. And I'm sure a lot of the audience listening to this probably got hooked on SpaceX the same way. I know I did. Like
Yeah.
not that I was following Elon Musk's career from PayPal, and I
Right.
kind of
Oh,
heard the story of SpaceX however many years ago and was like, oh, okay, that's never going to work, right? Like
yeah.
that was my reaction back then because I didn't know any better. And then over the years, you see kind of that thing developing, and it starts getting your attention to where we are now with SpaceX and kind of their rockets, and that is not only in the top of the headlines, but it's in top of mind for a lot of us.
Right. Right. No, and it kind of even goes to show that even someone with all those resources is still going to have those failures. So, no one's going to look at you any differently with like you said, double the amount of problems and things to battle with. Your failures are not going to just completely tarnish your entrepreneurial journey. So it's really something to look at and use as an opportunity instead, and really hone in on that optimism that all entrepreneurs really have to survive, and just choose to push forward and focus on that execution, so that people do take you seriously and have something to work with.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I'll just give you kind of two quotes on this. So one is, I think it's taught in every business school now, which is if you've never experienced failure, that means you haven't been taking enough risks, and so
Right.
you're leaving opportunity at the table. That's one. And the other one, which sticks in my mind, which is from President Biden, which is that failure is inevitable.
Yes.
So failure is inevitable. It is what how we choose to deal with it, right?
Right.
Do we choose to let it teach us to be better at kind of what we're doing? And as an entrepreneur, hopefully that's what the lesson is, right? It's not came to a fork in the road, took the way on the right. Well, it turns out that wasn't the right way. So now we're going to go, that teaches us something.
Yeah.
So now we're going
It
to
sure
try left
does.
and see where that path goes.
Yep, it sure does. Well, thank you so much, Hassan, for being on here today, and just giving us so much insight from your previous experiences and really just what to remember whenever you are pursuing these entrepreneurial journeys. So thank you so much. And I hope you stay warm up there up north.
Thank you. I'll try. Thank you so much for your time, Madison.
And that is it for today's Spark Spotlight, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy getting to hear more about Hassan's insight and all the advice he has regarding entrepreneurial journeys. Be on the lookout for who I'm going to interview next. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on all of our socials at UHI2C on Instagram and UAH Invention to Innovation Center on Facebook. Onward and upward.